11:56 p.m., November 2nd, 2025. High above Belarus, the Russian military made a fatal miscalculation. After unleashing $1.8 billion of destruction on Chernobyl, a pilot's voice crackled across an open channel. Tankers are rock solid. Mission success. But Moscow was about to learn why that success, in the brutal calculus of modern warfare, was a death sentence. They had forgotten a promise made just 1 week prior. For every strategic asset Ukraine lost, Russia would lose 2. In exactly 32 minutes, that promise from the Ukrainian army was about to be kept. Not with another missile strike, but with the surgical assassination of Russia's airborne refueling capability, a critical component of their air force. At 10:47 p.m., from the Machulivsky Air Base, 2 of Russia's last operational Il-78M-98 tankers lumbered into the night sky. Each, a $150 million flying gas station, laden with 238,000 pounds of jet fuel. Their escort, 4 Tu-22 M3 backfire bombers armed with devastating weapons. Another $400 million of strategic air power. This was not just a mission, it was a statement of overwhelming military force in this global conflict. 11:20 p.m. From the bombers, 16 Kh-32 cruise missiles dropped from their pylons, engines igniting, streaking toward Chernobyl. At Mach 4, the impact was absolute. 3 HIMARS warehouses vanished in secondary fireballs. 2 American-made AN/TPQ-53 counter-battery radars went silent, permanently. In less than 5 minutes, Ukraine's defense systems sustained $1.8 billion in damages. The Russian bombers, their work done, began their turn toward friendly airspace. But for these troops, the mission wasn't over. The thirsty Tu-22s needed fuel. The 2 Il-78 tankers moved into position over southern Belarus to provide it. They believed they were invulnerable, operating under the protective umbrella of a friendly nation's air defense. This was their second fatal miscalculation of the night, a failure in war analysis. The damage report hit President Zelensky's desk, a moment of silence. His order to the commander of the armed forces was cold and precise. Operation Hose Sniper 2.0 is authorized. Tactical command has full discretion. The command cascaded down, deep into an underground bunker. A general looked up from his screen. He'd waited for this signal since November 1st. For 2 days, his assets, his soldiers, and their modern weapons had been lying in wait. It was a sterile, digital ambush, orchestrated 16,000 feet above the earth by advanced drones. The 6 Leleka 100s. Ghosts in the high-altitude cold, they watched for hours. At 12:12 a.m., they saw it. The Russian air wing began its predictable descent to 15,000 feet for refueling. Through a thermal lens, a single hot point appeared on the lead tanker's wing. The refueling probe, heating to 410 degrees Fahrenheit. The trigger was pulled deep in the frozen silence of the Neravlia forest. 8 Bayraktar TB2 drones came to life. On the radar screen of an S-400 battery, 4 high-priority targets suddenly appeared. They were screaming towards sovereign airspace. The system's automated protocol made the logical, yet fatally wrong decision. 28 seconds later, the sky tore open. 2848 N6DM interceptors launched in a ripple fire. This was defense technology in action. Each missile cost more than the entire Ukrainian decoy squadron combined. The interceptors tracked true, one by one. The 4 hollow decoys were vaporized in brilliant flashes. The sacrifice was complete. $56 million of Russia's finest air defense had been spent, traded for $40,000 worth of flying shells. The S-400 battery was now critically depleted, its operators staring at empty launch tubes. They scanned the darkness, wondering where the second wave was. But this feint served a second purpose. The local Pantsir S-1 unit, also tracking the decoys, opened up with its 30mm cannons, filling the sky with tracers. It emptied its magazines in seconds. This created the critical 30-second reload window Ukrainian planners had counted on. With the ground-based threats neutralized, the sky was now open. Only the fighter escorts remained. They were blind to the move no one could have predicted. High above, descending from the stratosphere, the solution was already in motion. At 002, 5 hours, launched from near Kharkiv, a Ukrainian RHM-2 ballistic missile arrived at its designated coordinates. A stark example of new defense technology. Precisely at 0028, there was no brute force explosion. Instead, it detonated 17,000 feet directly above the lead Il-78. The dual-purpose warhead unleashed its payload. 1,200 tungsten fragments shredded the atmosphere, blooming into a cloud of radar-reflecting clutter. A new tactic in modern warfare. But the true weapon was a localized electromagnetic pulse. For the Russian Air Force pilots, the world turned white. The delicate electronics of their advanced AESA radars were flash-fried. Their systems overloaded, displays flooded with a snowstorm of static. For 12 critical seconds, these elite military soldiers were deaf and blind. From the darkness below, nap of the earth, just 150 feet above the trees, 4 Bayraktar drones began their final ascent. A synchronized 4-part execution, 4 Ukrainian pilots, 1 perfect strike. The first drone, TB201, approached from the north. Its laser painted an invisible pinpoint of light. The target, engine number 2 on the lead, Il-78. For 9.2 agonizing seconds, the beam held steady. Then its MAM-L missile fell away, committed to the attack. Impact. The missile punched through the nacelle, shredding fan blades. A $15 million piece of advanced military engineering became a useless drag anchor. The massive tanker lurched, a violent, bone-jarring shudder. It dropped altitude instantly. Now it was wounded. Predictable. And almost simultaneously, the next blow fell. From the northeast, TB202 delivered a surgical strike. Its laser painted the reinforced steel coupling, the precise point where the Tu-22's probe met the tanker's hose. The missile was a high-speed blade, shearing the connection clean. A geyser of jet fuel erupted into the night. 180 gallons per minute, instantly atomized. A massive, volatile cloud of vapor enveloped the wounded tanker. This war analysis shows a perfectly laid trap. The stage was set. The fuel cloud was the fuse. All that was needed was the spark. This is the reality of war. TB203 provided it. Its laser found the auxiliary fuel tank on the Il-78's left wing, already shrouded in a shimmering haze of its own fuel. This MAM-L missile was different. Its warhead, packed with high explosives, was designed to detonate on impact. The goal: ignite the vapor. A 4,200-degree fireball. But the Ukrainian plan was more ruthless. It accounted for the second tanker, whose crew could only watch in horror. The nature of this global conflict is unforgiving. From the west, TB204 was already painting their right-wing auxiliary tank. Its missile was away. An insurance policy. Total annihilation was the objective for these troops. At 002830, the first 3 modern weapons arrived within the same horrifying fraction of a second. 0.8 seconds after the Tu-22's probe made full contact. Then physics took over. The thermite warhead detonated. Its spark found the vapor cloud. This was no ordinary fire. This was a fuel-air explosion, a brutal instrument of warfare. The air itself became the bomb. 238,000 pounds of jet fuel ignited. A massive fuel-air event. The lead, Il-78, was simply erased. Its spine snapped at frame 42, torn in half. A burning wreck falling at a 47-degree angle. It dragged the tethered Tu-22M3 down with it like a stone. There was no escape for the second Il-78. The shockwave from the first blast, a literal wall of fire, washed over it. A brutal lesson for any army. It hit at the exact moment the 4th missile punctured its wing tank. The result? A catastrophic chain reaction. The Navy and Marines study such tactics. Time of event, 002842. A second, brighter blast bleached the landscape white. The Belarusian night became a terrible momentary day. The defense systems had failed. As their screens cleared from the EMP, the Russian pilots saw only a blossoming inferno where their tankers had been. A moment of stunned silence over the comms. Then, raw fury. MiG-31 No. 217 fired a long-range R-37M missile. This military news was grim. His radar, still recovering, couldn't achieve a solid lock. The missile flew wild, chasing a Phantom for 18 miles. 7 seconds later, Su-35 No. 004 fired a 9M96E2. In the chaos, its seeker acquired the largest signature. A burning wing from the first Il-78, a useless kill. But the pilot of Su-35 No. 7 was cold, calculating. He ignored the ghost returns from the falling wreckage. He knew the true culprits were small, low, and running. His thermal imager swept the dark tree line, a silent hunt for a flicker of heat, a technological ghost against the cold earth. He found one. TB-204, the drone that crippled the second tanker. It was the last to break away. Its escape vector was a fraction of a second too slow. It was enough. The Russian pilot saw the fleeting heat signature diving for the forest and rolled his flanker hard. Diving in pursuit, he wouldn't waste a missile on such a small target. He closed to 800 meters and armed his GS-31 cannon. A stream of 30mm rounds tore through the air, 3 times the speed of sound. TB-204 never stood a chance. It vaporized, a cloud of carbon fiber and electronics, a secondary flash in the night, a mere footnote to the main inferno. By the time the Russian pilot pulled up, it was over. 3 of the 4 Ukrainian drones had melted back into the forest canopy. One of the weapons would not be returning. A small but bitter price for a strategic masterstroke. The digital battlefield went silent, but the strategic shockwave of this global conflict was just beginning. The immediate damage assessment was catastrophic. 2 Il-78 M98 tankers gone. 2 Tu-22 M3 bombers dragged down with them as collateral damage. A total of $560 million in Russia's most advanced Air Force hardware, reduced to burning scrap. But the real cost of this war wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in strategic paralysis. With these 2 aircraft gone, Russia had fewer than 8 operational Il-78 tankers left in its entire military. The long-range aviation fleet, the pride of the Kremlin's defense systems, was effectively crippled. It had lost the ability to strike targets deeper than 400 miles into Ukraine. This was not a temporary setback. It was a strategic castration, lasting 6 months. In a panic, Russia's remaining tankers were immediately evacuated to the safety of Omsk, deep in Siberia. But the nightmare for their army was just beginning. This was only the opening act of a nationwide night of retribution. As the tankers burned, the rest of Russia's warfare infrastructure was being systematically dismantled hundreds of miles to the east. 40 Lyuki long-range drones slammed into the Ryazan oil refinery, turning its primary distillation unit into a column of fire. Visible from 50 miles away, simultaneously, near Voronezh, a different swarm of drones bypassed local air defenses. Their target, the Electron plant, a key facility producing guidance systems for modern weapons, gutting the avionics assembly lines. And in Bryansk, the most surgical strike of all, a single explosive drone didn't target a building, but the traction substation. It powered the main railway line to the front. The rails were untouched. The power was cut. All military transport for the troops was paralyzed for days. This was no series of isolated attacks. It was a coordinated, multi-front assault on the nervous system of Russia's war machine. This military update was grim. An enraged President Lukashenko confronted Putin. The question was simple and furious. You told me my airspace was safe. This military news electrified Ukraine's allies. The United States and Poland jointly announced a new $5 billion aid package, fast-tracking deliveries of ATACMS missiles and 300 Switchblade 6-100 drones. Let's look at the final war analysis. The operation was a response to a $1.8 billion attack on Ukraine. The total cost of the assets expended to exact this revenge including the ballistic missile, the smart munitions, and the lost drone, was approximately $8.5 million. For a pittance, Ukraine delivered $560 million in direct material losses, a return on investment of over 65 to 1. No Wall Street fund delivers that return. This single battle etched a new law into the calculus of modern warfare. The victor is not the side with the costliest air force. It's the side that transforms a 0.8-second window into 6 months of strategic paralysis, all with 4 laser beams and 4 small bombs. This law of warfare was not academic. It triggered a frantic geopolitical chain reaction. Humiliated, strategically trapped, Putin made a desperate play on November 6th, just 3 days after his prized assets were vaporized. 10,000 North Korean soldiers destined for the front lines. 5,000 combat engineers for the rear. Their mission: rebuild the infrastructure Ukrainian drones were methodically dismantling. It was a global admission of catastrophic losses in troops. Putin was importing soldiers from a pariah state just to hold the line. The move ignited another powder keg, putting Asia on edge. South Korea and Japan went on high alert. The West's response was swift, decisive. But it wasn't just about Ukraine's success. They saw the asymmetric air campaign. They also saw the brutal reality on the ground. Near Pokrovsk, the Russian army was still grinding forward, using sheer 20th century mass, chewing up 34 square miles a week, paying a horrific price in blood for every meter of ground. Witnessing this duality, Ukrainian innovation against brute force, the U.S. and Poland acted. A joint $5 billion military aid package was announced. It was tailored for this new war. 300 Switchblade 600s, designed to bleed the Russian ground advance. And the long-range ATACMS missiles, the modern weapons needed to replicate strategic strikes like Operation Hose Sniper, but on a much larger scale. But it was Sweden's prime minister who defined the new reality. On November 6th, he spoke, calling for the permanent isolation of Russia. This was about building a permanent military and economic wall around a rogue state. He demanded a final cutoff of all Russian gas. A new era of European defense spending had begun. The battle lines for a generational global conflict were drawn. On one side, a Kremlin deploying human wave tactics and desperate alliances. On the other, a nation proving the future of warfare has arrived. It belongs to those who innovate, those who adapt, those who turn an enemy's strength into a catastrophic vulnerability. A key lesson in war analysis. The next chapter of this war is unwritten. These new weapons will be the pen. Which brings us to the strategic question. You are the commander. This new military aid is yours. What is the priority? Unleash the ATACMS deep behind enemy lines? Cripple their logistics from afar? Or deploy the Switchblade drones and halt the advance at Pokrovsk, saving your troops now? State your strategic choice. Provide your reasoning in the command brief below. Awaiting your analysis.